do you know?
I'm
Just
so
well,
that you worked with.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I want to thank Mayor Larson and the village administrator Marcus for coming up with this idea before I even had a chance to broach it. And they put this together. And I want to thank the village board for approving it. And I want to thank the village board for continuing to support the garden at Home Sweet Home. Landscape Details is working at the garden now. And of course, we need to thank the Department of Public Works, the police department, and Lorraine the Great. Lorraine McKay fostered all this and put this together and kept on it and kept on it. Yes. So if you don't like it, you know who to blame. And then, of course, Jenny from the Hedges. Jenny Lilia and her staff from the Hedges in 631-324-7101 have put together the refreshments for today. All right, thank you so much. Okay, well, you can't do anything at Home Sweet Home without the following happening. And I'd like to introduce the Strong Sisters, Karen, Barbara, and Linda.
Mid pleasures and palaces, though we may roam, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. A charm from the skies seems to hallow us there, which see through the world is ne'er met with elsewhere. Home, home, sweet, sweet home, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. An exile from home, splendor dazzles in vain. Oh, give me my lowly thatched cottage again. The birds singing gaily that come at my call. Give me them with the peace of mind dearer than all. Home, home, sweet, sweet home, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home.
Okay, contrary to what you may be hearing, Loretta didn't start these gardens. Do you know if you came here in 1927, there was a little man standing right over there where those tables are, and he was the gardener. He was George Fowler, a Montauk Indian, who was the first gardener here at Home Sweet Home. He was also the gardener at the Moran House and the Edward Osborne House at the corner. And then when the museum was sold to the village in 1927, Mrs. Sterling Peters and the Garden Club of East Hampton took over, planting and taking care of it, and I'm sure the Ladies Village Improvement Society was also involved. Later, under the direction of Mrs. Ruth Benjamin, Peggy Tarr, Ann Kramer, Edward Strom, and Abel Geis, the gardens were continued to be maintained. In 1978, the Garden Club named the Herb Garden after Mrs. Ellery James. The garden was designed by Sandra Wolf. Irene Tobin paid for the installation of an underground water system in Home Sweet Home, and it's still here, and she hired Larry Lilly to install it and maintain it at no cost to the village. He's still doing it today. Every year, the village gets a bill, 000, from Larry Irrigation, okay? Now, when the village hired Loretta in 1999, Jill Helm and Scott Fithian at the Highway Department made their glass greenhouse available to Loretta, and what she did is she would plant plants down there and seeds And then when they were ready, she brought them to Home Sweet Home, saving the village hundreds of dollars. She also, Jeffrey's mother, Martha Heppenheimer, is going to tell you about the bullpen that they erected behind our house in Amagansett. Okay, now, Home Sweet Home was awarded a Certificate of Merit for Landscaping by the Garden Club in 2004. All right, that's enough of me. Now, when Loretta was hired in 1999, the mayor at the time was the Honorable Paul Rickenbach, and I've asked him to come here and say a few words. Your Honor? The mic is on. You're on.
You know who that was? That was Mr. Loretta Orion right here. But thank you very much, you. It's a humbling honor and a pleasure and a warm moment for me to be here this afternoon to recognize a spectacular, beautiful, warm human being. And contrary to what was announced by her husband, Loretta is with us today in spirit, and she's looking down, and I think she's smiling at each and every one of us, and for that we say thank you. Loretta, when she was retained by the Board of Trustees back in '99, we had no idea of the gem that we picked to take over this beautiful location. It just manifested and furthered itself, and the rest is history, and that's continuing today. But more important, we remember Loretta as a person, beautiful human being, multifaceted. Golly, she was a professor of anthropology. She was involved in botany, worked in restaurants. I mean, she was just from A to Z, and it made her a total human being. And I think sometimes each of us has said that we would like to live a segment of her life in our lives. That's how beautiful she was. So to you and family, thank you so much. God bless her soul, and she's with us. Thank you.
Okay, Jeffrey Heppenheimer worked with Loretta for 6 years. He couldn't be here today. He has a very important job. He's a teacher, okay? And he's having parent conferences tonight. But he has sent his mother, Martha, to read his thoughts about working here at the garden. Ladies and gentlemen, Martha Heppenheimer.
Good afternoon. Unfortunately, my son Jeffrey could not be here. He's very sad about that. But he's got parent-teacher conferences, and they don't let him go. So he had asked me to read the following, and so here we go. Hello, my name is Jeffrey Heppenheimer. I worked with Loretta as her garden helper on weekends and in the summer for 6 years when I was in high school and college. I apologize that I could not be here in person to deliver this message, but circumstances beyond my control preclude me from attending. However, I request that the following be read aloud in memory of Loretta. Little did I know that a school project more than 20 years ago today would lead to a great friendship between myself and Loretta. I was a high school freshman that knew very little about Home Sweet Home or its beautiful gardens. I chose the museum as the location for my community service project, and I called you to see how I could help the museum by volunteering my time. He introduced me to his wife, Loretta, and I began working in the garden right away. We instantly made a connection. I only made it halfway through my first day when Loretta suddenly disappeared inside and came back with Hugh moments later, offering me a job as the garden assistant for the summer. I was thrilled to be working with Loretta, and I knew it was the beginning of a very special relationship. Working with Loretta in the garden was a wonderful experience. She had such a passion for the plants, and it quickly rubbed off on me. We soon became much more than co-workers, and it didn't take long for us to become good friends. Loretta had a wealth of knowledge about all kinds of plants that she readily shared with me, and I soon became an expert on all the plants in the garden. I especially enjoyed the herb garden, where I learned the historic and modern uses of many different herbs. I still use much of this knowledge that I gained from Loretta to maintain my own garden. And as a teacher, I lead a group of people that take care of our school garden, something I would have never been able to do if I hadn't met Loretta. As a teenager, I was eager to learn about life. We used to sit in the garden for hours, sharing stories about our lives, all the while getting our work done. It was such a pleasurable experience that many times it didn't even feel like work. Loretta's other passion in life was her research, specifically the life of Goody Garlic, a local woman accused of witchcraft. She was writing her book at the time, and I learned so much about the local history and the history of the Gardner family in East Hampton. I was always eager to learn more. I, in turn, used to tell her stories of my boyish adventures, which she always enjoyed. She used to offer me advice and guidance as well, something a growing teenager can always use to their advantage. Both Loretta and I dislike working in the heat of the day, so we would start late and end after dark many times. I will always remember those late nights in the garden. I felt like I was helping a friend, not working for my boss. As time went on, we became very close, and I began to help her in her own garden at home. Together, as a team, we planned and executed from scratch a large, extensive garden at her home. We used this garden as a starting point for the many plants that ended up in the beautiful garden you see here today. We even had our own clever name for it, the Bullpen, as a nod to Hugh's great love of baseball and our staging area for the plants at Home Sweet Home Gardens. This was our crowning achievement together and led us to many late nights at Loretta's home, working, having dinner, chatting, and reflecting on the future of the garden. At one point, Loretta gifted me one of her prized possessions, a short ceremonial sword made by a friend of hers. It hangs to this day in my home office. I think of it every time I glance up, and it reminds me of the good old days in the garden. It was heartbreaking to hear of Loretta's passing. She was such a wonderful woman with a wealth of knowledge and a strong passion for both the history of our town and heirloom plants. I will miss those days when I could just lie down in the grass after hand clipping the edge of a garden bed and chat with Loretta about her research or learn about a new plant that had just been planted. Loretta was a special person, and I feel honored to have known her. She has always held a special place in my heart. I could not think of a better person to dedicate the garden to. I thank you all for coming here today and showing your support. I wish I could have been here in person myself, but I will always hold Loretta in my heart, and I'm sure she still thinks of me often in her life behind. To Loretta, thank you very much for everything. You helped anchor me and put me on a path for success in life, and in time, I will meet you again and fill you in onto where life took me. I would just like to add a short, my personal reflection of Loretta. And if there is one word that I could use to describe Loretta, it would be jolly. She was always jolly and she was always smiling. So please smile for her. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker was a former student of myself and Loretta. If we had students like Amy, we could still be teaching. Not only did she star in all the plays I directed at Spring School, but she also went with Loretta on some of her research trips when she was studying the Wiccan movement. Today, Amy is going to give her reflections and read a poem by Elaine Weiss, one of our buddies down at Main Beach. Amy?
The poem is entitled Loretta by Elaine Weiss. I never knew who you were when you were Loretta 1, when your mind danced everywhere, and always with you. I never knew who you were when you were Loretta 1, who delved into history's hidden corners, who revealed the mysteries of the world of the occult. And then, when you became Loretta 2, cocooned in your own mysterious world, locking secrets inside yourself, we met on the deck as you walked side by side with Hugh, his arm always encircling you when you became Loretta 2. With no words of invitation, you allowed me to intrude, to interrupt your inward focus, to listen as I spoke to you. Could you have known I was hoping for a connection, to let you know I cared about when you became Loretta 2? I wanted to reach beyond your silence. I wanted you to tell me that you knew what I was trying to do. And you heard me and you answered, not with words, of course, but with your hesitant expression that gradually unfolded into that proof that I so desperately craved, that yes, I had touched you. I knew for sure it was the case because my miracle came every day. When you went beyond your stare, when you knew that I was not just a passerby, when you included me somewhere inside of you, I knew because you smiled. Thank you, Elaine. That was beautiful. I want to talk about Loretta 1. There's so many things I could say. She was one of the most talented and gracious people I have ever known. It's not possible to list the million ways that she was special, and not just to me. I'm looking out here and seeing faces of the people that she touched every day, and invariably, she left you a changed person. Loretta was a scholar, a writer, a teacher, a mentor, and a friend. She was devoted to Huey and loved their life together. She was a gifted artist, printmaker, and seamstress. She crocheted delicate lace and embroidered and created textile art. One of the many beautiful things she created is this stole. It is the Hope Vestment. It's meant to serve as a reminder that as dismal as right now may be, hope always springs eternal. And that was something that was very dear to Loretta. And she passed this along to friends who were having a tough time, to keep as long as they needed it, to wrap around themselves, to remember that there was hope and that it is going to get better no matter what. Loretta was captivated by the elegance of the natural world. She loved animals, desperately loved animals, most especially her sweet little kitties. She loved poetry. She loved digging in the garden, this garden, her garden at home, her garden in the bullpen. She was possibly never happier than when she was covered with soil. She threw the best dinner parties, and she had a wicked sense of humor. Her laugh lit up an entire world, not just a room. Talking to so many people since she's passed, I've heard the same refrain. She changed my life, repeatedly. It was her compassion, her deep sense of empathy, which made her such a natural mentor and friend. She befriended students of all ages, including me, constantly encouraging all of us to new heights. I was lucky enough to spend hours in this garden with her. I helped her dig out Siberian irises with a hatchet. Let me tell you, it was touch and go. She imbued everything she did with intention. Her love and her care. Her very essence is in this garden as much as it is in the stole that I wear. Everything she created and every word she spoke was with intention. And it was her sense of compassion and empathy that guided that. One of Loretta's favorite authors was Saint-Exupéry, who wrote The Little Prince. And I would like to leave you with one of her favorite bits, if I can find it. I did have it queued up, but you know, best laid plans and all. It is only with the heart. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is invisible to the eye, what is essential is invisible to the eye. The sense of compassion that Loretta had for everyone, for animals, for the earth, for all of these things, for the natural world, just made her shine. That's part of the quality that made her so special. And what made her even more special is that she wanted to give you a piece of that every time she encountered you. And I feel so lucky and so blessed to have spent so much time with Loretta and with Huey. They both indelibly have changed my life.
I'm going to get my cell phone out now and queue up. No, I'm not. All right. When Loretta decided she had to retire from the garden, the village got lucky because they were able to hire Botanica Plant and Property Management, 631-377-1080. When Jill and Fredo came here, what they did is they sat down with Loretta as well as she could communicate, and they tried to pass on her vision of the garden, and they did a wonderful job. So today I'm inviting Jill Salazar to talk about her experiences with Loretta at the garden. Jill?
Thank you all for being here today to celebrate the life of Loretta Orion. Loretta was my friend, she was my mentor, and she was my creative partner here at Home Sweet Home. I first met Loretta and Huey when my husband and I applied for the position as the gardeners at Home Sweet Home Museum. I knew from the first moment that I laid eyes on her that she was someone I had to be friends with. I knew that I wanted to work with her, and I knew that I wanted to learn from her. She was a brilliant mind and an incredibly bright light in this world. Her passion and joy for the grounds were contagious. If we dug up a broken piece of pottery, she would promptly plant it back in the ground so that someone else would find the joy of digging it up one day. One day, Loretta and I were working in the garden, and she told me that, that this garden she wanted to be her legacy. I told her that she was too young to start thinking about a legacy, so let's keep just digging and worry about all that mess later. She promptly brought me in the house and started showing me her notebook of plant material and ideas for the garden. Well, her book was not simply just one book. It was 10 gigantic binders filled with notes, drawings, and seed packets. There were drawings of pink and black gardens. There were pollinator gardens before anyone even knew what a pollinator garden was. There was a drawing for a medicinal herb garden, and there were volumes and volumes of historical plant material that dated from 1880 to 1920, because that was what belonged in this garden. She went on to tell me that when she started working in this garden, it was filled with Siberian iris, and how preposterous that was, because it would have never been used during that time period. So she studied and she researched, and she grew historically accurate plant material from seed. And we worked and we planted and we weeded. So while we worked, she taught me about her travels around the world to study women's shamanism, and she taught me about plant material that was historically correct for the period when people would have occupied the house. And she tried to teach me French. Oh God, how she tried to teach me French. And I have to admit that my French is probably the worst French you've ever heard. And it's probably the biggest failure in her educational career. But she surely did try hard. We worked in the sun and rain. and we celebrated life's daily victories and defeats together. When my husband got his citizenship, we came to the garden to tell Loretta first. We went straight from the courthouse after the swearing-in ceremony because she had spent weeks quizzing and drilling him about American history. She wanted him to pass his test with flying colors. And as we walked down that little brick path, tiny little Loretta grabbed the gigantic American flag, frantically waving the flag, laughing hysterically, and saluted the country's newest citizen, all the while singing the national anthem at the absolute top of her lungs. And while my French is nothing short of embarrassing, his English is pretty darn good now, thanks to Loretta's hard work. And if it weren't for her, we'd probably be having this conversation in Mexico City or somewhere south of the border. Loretta thought that this garden was her legacy, but in my heart and in my mind, I see an entire trail of legacies seated before me. It was the trail she left behind her. I think that the greatest lesson that I ever learned from Loretta was about love. Huey and Loretta might be the greatest love story ever told. She adored Huey, and Huey adored her. But she loved all of us in our own special way, and that, to me, was her legacy. The world was a better place because she was here, and I'll never forget the days in the garden with my dear friend Loretta. I miss her terribly, and I know that each and every one of you feel the same. Thank you for coming to celebrate her brilliant mind, her gorgeous smile, and these beautiful gardens. Thank you.
Okay, now I'd like to introduce the present mayor of the Incorporated Village of East Hampton, Jerry Larson, who will present the plaque.
Thank you, everybody. Really great stories, very touching. The music was wonderful, and it's nice to see everybody here who's come out. And it's definitely the village board's pleasure to be able to do this honor for Loretta and for you. So I just wanted to say a couple of things in honor of Loretta's devotion to these gardens that she loved so much. We dedicate this plaque to be placed here at Home Sweet Home for eternity. The plaque will read, from 2000 to 2014, Loretta Orion used her research skills, her artistic sense, and her love of beauty to restore the gardens at Home Sweet Home Museum. Her gardens were said to be painting with flowers. She loved her gardens and sang the praises of her helpers. This plaque is dedicated, these gardens are dedicated as of today to Loretta Orion. And I thank you all for coming, and I'm going to take the cover off the plaque now. And it's so fitting and it's so beautiful. So thank you all for coming, and Hugh, thank you for having us all here.
Okay, it's time for Jenny from the Hedges. Enjoy yourself. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much. Thank you for all those wonderful words we heard. Loretta would have been very, very happy, I'm sure. So let's continue the party.